Somebody's got to have a question.
No question?
How do you react to those who are against what you support? You know those few that are kind of a little iffy on the situation?
Well, the question was, how do we react to those who are against what we stand for or who are iffy on the situation? And you know, I think it's human nature. You know, initially when you confront someone that really disagrees with you, to feel some defensiveness. I make a very conscious effort when I sense that in myself, you know, to stop and recognize that it's happening, and to realize that when that defensiveness is there, that then there's some fear, there's something else going on with the other person that I maybe need to at least try to be open to. But I guess that mostly we focus on amazing and wonderful people that we are privileged to meet all over the world now, who feel very positively about Rachel, certainly, but who are also taking action themselves. And it's very heartening to me. I feel like Craig and I are in a very privileged place because we speak in some small towns across the United States. We've been in Israel and Palestine. We speak in big urban areas like this. And it's really heartening to me to see that sometimes in the most unlikely places you find people who do know about what's going on here and do care. And even I think it's also heartening to go to places where you wouldn't expect to find support. We spoke in Mobile, Alabama recently. I kind of pick on Mobile, but I guess it's because I didn't expect that, to find a real progressive, forward-looking group around this issue there, but they were there. And then there were other people who came out to hear us who were more maybe the borderline kinds of people that you're referring to. And we're just very happy when we have that opportunity, really, to have some dialogue with those people.
Before the next question, I'm just going to stop this one.
I just want to say thank you for raising such an amazing daughter, first of all. And my question is, as to some of the roadblocks that you guys have experienced in, since that time. I know we hear a lot about the powerful Israeli lobby in Congress, and you hear a lot about media bias. What are some of the things that you've actually seen in terms of roadblocks to what you guys are trying to do, and what you, the awareness and some of the losses?
Oh boy. First of all, I'd point out that Rachel, like most of you people here, would probably say that she was everything she was in spite of her parents, because of her parents, like many other kids. I think that the roadblocks that we see are hard to identify in some ways because they don't always jump out as explicit. In terms of, for instance, the Israeli lobby, there have been times when we do, as a family, we've done a lot of lobbying on the Hill. And there was a time when we went up there and you could tell that somebody on the Hill had gotten our schedule and given it to AIPAC, because AIPAC had talked to everybody. We're talking right in front of us, and we knew they came around behind us and talked. There was then later, in late 2004, our family, and it was a number of Cindy's, actually, her sisters and brother-in-laws, and then our daughter Sarah and I, that were there. So a number of us were there. I think we were in 40 Senate offices in 3 days. So we were divided up and worked pretty hard at the whole thing. And nobody was coming back. Finally, Cindy's sister went across to the House side and went into a House office there. It was Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, who was in charge of the subcommittee of the House International Relations Committee, that actually there was a House Concurrent Resolution 111. Did I get that right? Yeah. That called for a U.S.-led investigation into Rachel's killing. And this Congresswoman kept it bottled up until it died in committee. And so this was right at the end of that. And so Cindy's sister just went over there and kind of told the report receptionist what she thought of this Congresswoman. And immediately there was somebody from APAC back in our senator's office. And the person we were working in, the staffer there, we said, well, what'd you do? And he said, well, they were asking why you're here. And he said, I told them you were here because you wanted an investigation. We said, well, that's right. And then he said, well, they're asking about you, so I just gave them your file. So our senator gave our file, all the information that we'd given her, over to APAC. And we said to the staffer, I said, you know, if APAC wants to know about it, just set up a meeting. We'd like to talk to them. You know, they can just ask us whatever. And oh, well, I don't think that would be progressive. So there's one instance where we know. Now, you can see stuff go a certain amount of way. We're doing a Freedom of Information Act requests of basically all of our federal government. And you can see email that goes back and forth and kind of gets to a place and then things kind of stop. You don't see it anymore. You can't FOIA, for instance, the White House. So it's interesting, and it needs to be analyzed more than I have as to who makes decisions. But so in our government, you can see, you don't know why things are being blocked, but you can see that things go, you know, for instance, the reason there are laws violated. For instance, when Rachel's killed, she was killed by a U.S. bulldozer. That was paid for apparently by U.S. funds. Well, if our aid goes to a country that uses it for human rights violations, then there are consequences for that. So we've been asking Congress and our government, why don't you follow up on this? What happened? You need to have an investigation. If they won't do an investigation, you need to do one yourself. And you can see nothing was ever followed. Some of those questions were asked by the State Department early on, but then it stops. And it's interesting there at a certain level. And I know the ambassador at the time to Israel, Cindy, I think, talked to Daniel Kurtzer, and he said the decisions for that were made far above me. And you know, you can't tell quite where that is. We got a lot of help, as Cindy said, from Larry Wilkerson, the Chief of Staff to Colin Powell. So, you know, if it's above Wilkerson and Powell, that gets you to the White House and that sort of thing. I don't know, Cindy, you probably want to talk about it. You can talk about the play.
No, only I just wanted to add and then get to another question. That I did have a conversation with Ambassador Kurtzer, former Ambassador Kurtzer. He was the ambassador in Tel Aviv, U.S. ambassador to Israel when Rachel was killed. And my sister, my daughter Sarah, and I met with him for several hours last year. And he expressed a lot of frustration about why more hadn't happened around Rachel's case. He said, why did they not do anything? Why did they not do anything? And he was referring back to people in the State Department, I believe. It was interesting to me to see, because you sort of get a sense that in dealing with something like this, there are people placed in various places that do maybe take one small step and then they wait to see what happens somewhere else. And at some place, in Rachel's case at least, everything stopped. Larry Wilkerson also told us, before the report of the Israeli investigation came out, that he thought that if that investigation wasn't adequate, that they would his boss would take it to the next level. Well, the next level is the White House. And what we don't know is if that really ever happened. And if so, I mean, clearly if it went to the White House, the response was not to do anything further because nothing more has happened. But it's a frustrating situation. What we do is, to the best of our ability, keep just applying pressure, even the small amounts of pressure that we can, in places where we think that our government still should be